Alrighty. So we're doing session 9, make and receive offers. This is when it's getting really real. And you are going to be way more confident after we go through this because we're going to do it. And y'all are a very special Ignite class because we are right at the point of transitioning from using .loop to DocuSign for our electronic signing. So I don't want to teach you .loop.
I don't blame you.
And
we don't want to.
And I don't have access to DocuSign quite yet. I should any day now. So the entire office will learn that together once. But the principles of what, the real estate part of making and receiving offers, we're just going to do the old-fashioned way on paper. And I spent the time and the office's money to make all these copies and handouts for you because in 3-hole punch them, the machine does that. Because I really want you're going to fill out, make notes, and keep these in your book as your reference, okay? Mm-hmm. So I also went through the session. There are only like 3 pages from the Ignite book that we're even going to look at today because this is everything you need to know. So at the risk of, and this is also with the handouts that you're going to fill in, I shouldn't get calls from any of you. Because I'm telling you everything, except for how to use DocuSign, which we don't know yet.
And to say hi.
I know, but you want to make an offer. So, because it really, you can do a better job for your client when you're not freaking about the forms, So, because we want you to be successful, professional, you are fiduciary for your clients, so we want you to know what the rules are. We want you to be the best agent out there. Okay, so if you would grab your make and receive offers, and Tiffany, would you just read my first little opening comment there? Hi! It's a different Chanel. Okay, we have started. If you would grab one of everything back there and jump on in.
Buying or selling a home is a major financial decision and can be a highly emotional experience for all parties in the transaction. Your job, remain calm and drive the bus.
Amen.
Okay, remain calm, and you are the driver of the bus. So there's a whole kind of team of people involved, and I'm going to teach you, best practice, and you're not going to say, well, that listing agent or that selling agent or that lender, all are going to drive the bus, so we're not going to have any of that. Okay, now, I wrote a little funny ha-ha because I want you to notice the difference between what the buyer wants and what the seller wants. And obviously you have to navigate between the two. Deborah, would you read what the buyer's goal is?
Buyer's goal, purchase a move-in ready property with 0 defects for more than they can afford and for as low as price as possible and close according to their timeline and convenience.
So, it's all about them, right? And they don't know why they can't afford this when they only qualify for this. So, possibly unrealistic expectations. So gentle, professional handling of that sort of. Now, thinking of your class with Kevin, and knowing that, they may have these expectations, can you see the benefit of having that buyer consultation where you preload? The best agents will tell you the more time that you actually spend on the front end with buyers specifically, explaining the process, explaining how you can get out of this, if it's legal, what it's going to cost you, what to expect when, kind of what the market's like, so that whether everything in this neighborhood's going for 97% of sales price, those sorts of things, it's gonna make the whole rest of the process so much better. And it is really tempting when you are a new agent and somebody says, oh, I saw this house, I know it's the one, can you take me to go see it? And you wanna jump in the car and take them because by heck, you want a contract and you want a commission. And next thing you know, that person is running you all over town and So I'm not saying don't go show them one house. I'm not saying that. But you need to say, okay, first you do need to vet them to make sure this is not an axe murderer. And at least ask, if they've been, even if it's somebody have they been pre-approved? I prefer to have a meeting with my clients before we go look at property, but under the circumstances, maybe they are leaving for a trip for 2 weeks. We can go see this, but before we go any further, we need to set a time to meet and talk about the whole process. Okay? So I'm not saying don't jump, but let them know right away there's going to be a meeting. And I don't know if Kevin mentioned this. Google Forms, cool buyer questionnaire. And I have one, and you can use mine, but you have to create it yourself in your Google Forms, which you have access to because you have a Keller Williams Gmail account. It is the bomb. You send your clients an email, and if it's a couple, you gotta have both email addresses, and their phone, whatever. But separately, you get their preferences about things, neighborhoods, how many bedrooms, all soup to nuts. And of course, even the process of filling that out gets them excited. But you also unearth, are they different? He doesn't want to go over 300 and she said, 400. All that kind of stuff. Google, once they submit to send it back to you, they put it in a spreadsheet for you so you can access it. I'll show y'all this later. Huh?
I've done that. It didn't put it in the spreadsheet.
Well,
Probably.
okay. We will go over that because it is a cool tool. Because of course, do you look professional? And you can add, logos and stuff. And like, dang, she is on it. Since we're all she's in this room. And they're excited and, so we are in sales. All right, so that's about buyers. Now, what do all sellers want? Chanel, would you read the seller's goal?
Seller's goal, sell their worth more than any other property in the neighborhood property as fast as possible or according to their timeline and needs, netting the most money, encountering the fewest hassles, selecting the buyer with the least risk of financing, failing through, or the buyer changing his or her mind and wanting to terminate prior to closing.
So they basically want a perfect buyer that does everything on their terms and a stress-free selling of their house. Now, what do you think reality is? They ain't no such transaction. Now, they're not all horrible by any means. And some of them can be just really, really smooth. So that's part of the purpose of this class is to empower y'all to minimize the stresses and hiccups so that you don't go gray early. It's because less preparation and education and training on your part equals more stress and gray hair and more deals that fall through and more clients upset with you. I promise you. Okay. According to Keller Williams, we want to aim for offers that win. Obviously, when you make an offer on behalf of your client, they don't all get accepted, right? Mm-hmm. So, offers that win. Doreen, would you read what constitutes that?
Reasonable offer price, considering market stats, property condition, days on market. Clean offer, solid buyer financing, sufficient but reasonable contingency period lengths, industry standard 1% earnest money promised immediately after binding, cordial communications with the co-op agent.
That's all I want, you know, that's all I want. It is doable. Okay. I put this definition in because I can't remember if it's on the test. What an offer is, which is the process of moving from a buyer or, pardon me, I inhaled a little spittle in that. I'm my own worst enemy. Going from, okay, now you've got a buyer contract or a listing agreement, and then getting under contract with them, it takes an offer. So, when we're not going to go over the time is of the essence, but part. I want you to notice at the bottom of the page where I put what a real estate consultant does when their buyer client wants to make an offer. Y'all are real estate agents already. You're licensed. You are, if you have and when you join one of the boards, board of realtors, then you are a realtor, all caps, registration symbol at the end. And all that's great, but we want you all kind of a step above that is to be a real estate consultant. You're not just a salesperson. You're really advising. I mean, some people will say real estate advisor. Some people will say, I mean, you'll hear Brad talk about you want to be your database's trusted real estate advisor, and that is true. But so advisor, consultant. All I know is at Mega Camp, Gary kept saying consultant, and Josh kept saying consultant. So that's why I'm using that. But advisor, consultant, and you want to, when you're talking to people, not just, I mean, I would get in the habit of saying, I'm a real estate consultant or advisor, whatever you like, rather than just, oh, I'm a realtor, I'm a real estate agent. Because it kind of sounds like a dime a dozen, you know, and it doesn't set you apart. And most people know, when you say consultant, you're going to be given advice. You've got more information and expertise than they do, and I think that's a good light to put yourself in.
Do you say a licensed real estate consultant? Because I would be confused if somebody said that to me, like, are you...
That's a great question.
You know what I mean? I'd be
Yeah,
like,
what do y'all think?
It almost sounds
I
like
don't
it's
know.
another field.
Yeah,
Instead of just an agent, then there's another where we consult with you regarding
Right,
before you even get an agent or an
Okay,
agent.
okay, that's valid.
So are you, does it sound like anybody could just be a consultant?
yeah, like I'm a real estate consultant.
Because the word is kind of thrown around,
Yeah.
thrown around. If you, so we'll think about, because there's how you talk about it and then what you put on your business card, or, you know, in like for your email signature and your business card, if you've got realtor, ampersand, you know, you've got your credentials on there, but just in talking, we'll kick that around, and because I see your point. So, we're not going to read everything. I'm going to, on the, this is how the big girls do it. When a client says, oh, this is the one, I want to make an offer. There's a sequence, and the average real estate agent just goes to the computer and starts filling in the forms. And then, oh, how do I fill this out? How do I fill that out? I don't know the answer to this, to that. We're not going to do that. Okay. So if you go in these, if you do these prep steps, but by the time you sit down, it'll be bing, bing, bing. So before you ever waste your time on paperwork, you're going to reach out to that listing agent. Hi, is your listing still available? You'd be surprised, because if they just went binding last night or that morning, it may not show up on FMLS, and nobody's broken any rules. It happens. I've been out on, and even Toshma may have mentioned this, when you're taking buyers to look at properties, usually if you make an appointment through showing time, they'll know to let you know if they've gone binding. But let's say in the private remarks it just said text listing agent or something like that. I make sure before we go there, I say, is such and such still available? I usually do it the night before, because I've had to drop out, properties that are already under contract. It happens. Have you received any offers? We'll get back to why you want to know that. And then you're building rapport with that agent. And I always start with text, because who knows, they could be in the middle of something. And busy agents, or everybody, doesn't like to answer the phone, especially if a phone number comes up and they don't know who you are. So I start with text, and believe me, if they have a listing and you're talking about their listing, they will respond. And they may even pick up the phone and call you. So I start with text, kind of as a courtesy. Don't email. That's
become
agent.
junk mail.
Agents are not good with email. Because they're on the go, So, all right. So your client has said, "Oh, this is the one." Now, when we make our offer today, we're going to make it on the house that you went to see yesterday. So, I'm going to teach you a trick.
At that price? I was just thinking.
No,
how
we're
much-
We're making the offer what we want to offer.
Right.
I was just thinking, how about 500?
Really?
How
So
about
I want to show you something.
Yeah.
Of course, it's small. You know what I'm going to do? Let me enlarge this a smidge.
The house did a lot of work.
Whoop. All right, now Deborah, if you need glasses, why are you sitting in the back?
Well, now
Can
I
you
can
see?
see it because
All right.
you blew it up. No one else has blown it up before.
Okay.
Didn't know how to.
So your client has said, "Ooh, I want to make an offer on this house." First thing, go back to it and check out the symbols. This symbol right here means that the listing agent, who is a Keller Williams agent, and from our office, has attached the disclosures to the listing, so you can get them yourself. You don't have to bother them.
I'm moving up.
Awesome. So, because if you want to get the seller's disclosure, community association disclosure, bud-based paint, that sort of stuff, it really is irritating to listing agents who have done this, and they are in the minority, I have to admit.
What is that little paperwork?
Yeah, I guess. It's like layers, stacks of paper. And if that's not there, then they're not there. But when I'm having my little text conversation with the listing agent and letting them calmly letting them know, oh, my client is interested in making an offer, don't tell her they're freaking, interested in making an offer. Before you make that call or text or whatever, look at the listing and see if this is here, because they hate it when you say, would you send me the disclosures? And they've already given them to you. Okay, so just get in the habit, because you probably, and unfortunately when you print the listing, the symbols aren't there, so you've got to look at it on your phone or online. So look to see if they have done them. Becky, in this case, has done them. So I printed for you seller's property disclosure. We're not doing anything with these right now, but we're going to physically put an offer together, and so that's why I wanted you to have them. Community association and a warranty deed. So I wanted you to know about this symbol. Yay. I'm going to leave this here for now. So you're kind of doing your research, because strategically you want to find out if I had a client And they were buying from a couple. The woman was a school teacher. This was happening we were making the offer in like April, late April. And it was really important to her she didn't want to have to move out of the house until school was up, which was about May 24th, I'll just say. But if I hadn't asked, I wouldn't have known that. So we intentionally made our offer, we closed on the 24th, but they could stay in until the 30th. Well, they liked us instantly. Mm-hmm. And all I had to do was ask, is there anything that's really important to your seller? Mm-hmm. So be strategic, because your job is to help your client win. So that's what you're doing and you can do all this by text. Once the listing agent knows that you're sniffing around, they may call you. It's fine. But you're pleasant, but calm. All right, now you want to present yourself before you go talking to your client about what you're going to offer and what closing date and all that kind of stuff. You want to have the answers to the questions that they're probably going to ask you. Because they all ask you, what do you think I should offer? They do. And so, I don't know. So here's what I do to be prepared for that discussion. Go in the listing, and the little alarm clock here is your friend. When you click that, it pulls up if there is any listing history, so you know if this thing has been listed, withdrawn, listed again, withdrawn, because usually you don't pay full price when something's lingered on the market. It also shows you, even if it wasn't in this case, if it had been bought and sold, let's say within the last 8 years, it'll show you the earlier listing, and you can look at those pictures. So you can see, with this same client I told you about, the current owners had sort of let their backyard go to seed, and they had a big dog. And my people were a little nervous about, what are we going to do with the backyard? I went to the clock. I pulled up the photos of the backyard from earlier times to show them what it could be, so that's another way you can serve your client, is by digging into the history. And if something's been renovated, you really want to look at the old listing to see, what it was. This is part of, serving your client. So I don't know what we're calling this. The stack of documents and the clock are super handy. So you need to, before you talk to your client, you need to see what's the buy-sell history of this house. Then you see, okay, now you go to the neighborhood, and you've been to the CMA class, so we're not going to do that. Essentially, if your client, what do you think? And you throw a number, they may say, why? Well, you need some evidence. Well, the facts are the closed transactions that have already happened. So go ahead and run them. Even if you don't do a formal CMA, I run the history of the neighborhood, and I go back a year just to see if there are not enough transactions. I go back a little further, just so when my client's like, well, what about that house? What about that house? I have my data there, because I want to be intelligent in front of my client. Okay. In this case, Becky nicely provided a legal description through the warranty that was in the middle of the warranty deed. Does everybody have a warranty deed? I want to just point out, the warranty deed is the statement of so-and-so sold this property to so-and-so, or quit claimed, or whatever. And it's usually, it could be multiple pages, but some of that's just signatures. In the middle of it, there's always a paragraph. All that tracked, line, blah, blah, blah. That actually is the legal description, but it's perfectly acceptable to just provide the whole thing. You know, you don't have to.
So, wait a minute,
Cut and paste.
you're asking for the warranty deed from the seller?
Not from the seller. You are. You're from the listing agent if they have it, which Becky did, but if not, I gave you the email to ask Gannick. Erica knows this. She has used this. And it goes to their whole office, and it's like whoever's the first one to respond. I usually get them back within an hour. And yes, they respond on the weekends and nights too. You know, plan ahead, but so I'm trying to teach you best practice to be ready to move quickly to make sure your client gets this property. You know, so you go ahead and get, Becky gave it to us, but if the listing agent posted them but didn't have a legal description, you now know how to get your own. And it's just need warranty deed. Please send the warranty deed for 122 Main Street, and do give the city, state, zip, and county. Thanks, love Stacy. I mean,
Is that so we make sure that there's no issues with someone else that should be part of the selling of the house, or?
not necessarily. That's a secondary.
Okay.
The primary is that on the purchase and sale, which we'll get to in a sec, you do not have a legally binding agreement unless you have a legal description.
Yeah.
So that's the
So this is the best way to treat
And
it.
where did you get it? Who do you email?
It's on
okay. I want y'all
It's
to
on
be
there.
following me
Close.
in my.
what we were reading off of, the make and receive
Oh,
offer.
that's
She's
Where
going
is
by
that?
line by line.
Okay, I've got
Wait.
it.
Okay, well, I'm on to page 2 now.
Okay.
And so since
You're
we would
talking
just-
so naturally, does it seem like you're going through a?
Okay.
We would just basically copy and paste that, or word for word, drop it into the contract.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
you mean copy the,
She's talking about the legal.
The legal description of the warranty deed.
you can, and I'm gonna show you how when we get there. I'm gonna show you how. I'm just helping you prep to do it.
So you're basically showing us the documents that are already in the system, because this listing agent would already put all of this in the listing.
Well,
Not necessarily.
sadly, it's probably not more than 20% of them
Okay.
Not
But
all.
they-
that do it.
Okay, they should.
And they're almost all Keller Williams agents.
Okay.
Exactly. My point was, so look before you ask for them, because you'll look like an idiot,
Right.
you know? And they'll be like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to deal with this agent. So, but if this symbol isn't here, that means they haven't attached them. Then when you're having your little, hey, what's important to the seller, would you please send me your disclosures to this email address?
Okay. Got it.
Okay. All right. We've got the legal description. You must next reach out to your client's lender. Hopefully they've already given you a pre-approval letter, which gives the person's contact number, etc. I just saw one from Navy Federal the other day, and it was definitely like a form letter. There was no human name. It was just Love Navy Federal. And there was an 888 number. So I was like, oh, great, this is going to be challenging to get a live person for that. But anyway, there are some blanks on the financing contingency, which we mentioned on Monday. You should not make up the numbers, because you could put your client at risk of losing their earnest money if you have to back out. So I start with text, so hopefully, good to get the cell number. And you want, well, you can read what you need to get. Certainty prefers to send a pre-approval letter that is property specific. So let's say you don't get this one, they go make an offer on another one, they're going to send you a new one. But not all lenders are like that. Actually, the majority of them aren't. They just do a generic. So you may already have a lovely pre-approval letter that says they're approved for $550,000 and putting 10% down And at this time, we estimate, or they've locked in a rate of 3.75. Because you need those details. A lot of pre-approval letters don't give you all those details, because you gotta have them. So if you don't have them, you're gonna need to get, what percentage are they putting down? What's the rate you've quoted them? You know, the term, is it 15 or 30? What type? That's, yes.
I was talking to Terry yesterday, and she shared something that I didn't even really think about, but if you're like giving an offer, if your client wants to present an offer and you have the pre-approval and the client wants to offer less, so let's say they got pre-approved for 300, but they only want to offer 285, she said that you can talk to the lender to get a letter to say 285, because if you send a letter that says 300 and you offer less, and they're like, well, why are you offering less? So I think that's something good to keep in mind too.
Right, because a lot of the more institutional lenders, as opposed to mortgage brokers or mortgage companies, so I'm talking banks and credit unions, they want to just be kind of one and done, here's your thing. And Chanel's point is correct. If let's say they're approved to 600, but they don't want to spend it all, you know. So do think about, so this is why you're going to get in contact with that lender before you have a deal. So you just wouldn't believe how many agents, not in our office, but they just, okay, 21 days, blah, 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 we're off to the races, and they're dealing with Bank of America, and by heck, they want 28 days. So, you're committing to that lender performing within those time frames, so don't make up the numbers yourself. Okay, so you got almost all the answers to whatever question your client's going to ask you, besides how much should I offer? And then you communicate with them. And this is remember my very first statement, this is a big deal to them. I think a phone call is in order, if you can get them on the phone, rather than just texting. Because this is a big deal. Probably bigger to them than to you. Because you want to say, when would you like to close? And closing, possession at closing, we're going to go over those terms. So anyway, my point is, treat your client with the understanding that this is huge for them, okay? All right. In the next paragraph, I mentioned your client letter, buyer letter, doing something like, especially in a multiple offer situation. And I'm still in the zone of prepping, because you don't want to have everything ready and go, oh, would you write a little paragraph, and hold up the works. So we're still in the prep to do this. Sometime, if it's appropriate to your client, if you've got some bean counter that has no personality, don't even ask. But if it's appropriate, say, hey, and if they're really in love with the property, you want to write a little paragraph as if you're writing to the seller, because you're going to cut and paste it in your email to send the offer over, about what are the things they love about the house, and going on about the yard also is huge. If you could tell the seller has put a lot in the yard, and then, oh, I just love your hydrangeas. If it's true, and it fits the personality, you always get points. It's just because seller, unless you're dealing with investors, an owner-occupant cares about their property, and it will touch their heart if you say something. That's an objective.
Has this always been around, or is this more new?
It started when inventory got low, so that there were multiple offers and things were going quick. And okay, how can I stand out in a crowd? Not every buyer has the financial resources to make the highest bid. So this is one thing your buyer can do to help their cause. But even I had a listing a year ago, and we weren't in multiple offers. The first one that came in, the buyer, wrote about it, and it was going to be her first home, and my seller just melted. I mean, it was still a good offer, but she's like, "Oh, we've got to sell to her." I'm telling you, and we're not doing it for manipulation. You want to put your buyer in the best light. So if
Personalize it.
right, personalize it, and if it is true if their feelings are genuine, why not share it? I've never heard of a seller going, "Oh, this is stupid." Yes,
My mother-in-law is selling her house right now,
Mhm.
and she's like one of those people that would have been happy about a letter. So because she was like, I care about my neighbors, like I've known them for a long time, and I want them to have somebody who takes care of the house, that loves the house. So I think letters like that really do work. For some sellers, like they really want to sell to somebody who's going to take care of it and regard their home, and especially older sellers. Yeah.
I got one when I sold last year, and I'd never seen it, and it was this very young couple, and she went on and on about watching her children from the kitchen window in the backyard playing.
how could you say no?
Well, they were the first offer that I took. No, and it was just like, and I had this little house out back that used to be a playhouse when my kids were little. Then it became a makeout house when they were older, so we had to transition. I'm kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I put deadbolts on it later, but I was like, when I talked to her the next day, I was like, you wrote that about the playhouse, and I walked her out there, and I showed her how I'd made it a little playhouse, like a tea house party and barbecues, and because I didn't have a basement. And the way my yard was set up, they could walk right to the little house and play, and she could watch them the entire time.
There you go. We're talking strategy, folks. Strategy.
I
Tiffany.
would say when you're sending over a letter, I sold my house last year, and the person gave me a letter, but it was very generic and very impersonal. And I was like, this kind of defeats the purpose. I'd rather not get a letter
I agree.
at all.
I
Get
agree.
something where it's like, yeah, we want to be here, we like the house. Well, I'm like, I love my house. I don't even want to sell it, but I need to.
I'm glad you shared that. So that's why when I was saying if it's appropriate, that one wasn't appropriate. That agent shouldn't have sent that. She should have said, "Oh, this isn't going to really add." Now, yes, you can if it's like a young couple and the wife is pregnant. You can include a photo, or I take that back. Rewind. Fair housing best practice is you do not include photos of the humans that might be occupying the house, but you're welcome to include the pets if you know the seller is pet friendly. Who doesn't fall for pets? So, but you never know how people react to what humans look like, or so don't go there. Now, Susan Eschbach, who's one of the top agents in our office, go back 2 or 3 years, we'd come out of the recession and inventory was really tight, and she had coached her buyer client to do this, and they wrote a letter. Well, somehow, like 11 Alive News heard about it, and so she and her clients were put on, the little news thing about, so that may have helped spread the practice. And they just like, oh yeah, we're good. It was kind of similar to yours, Deborah, that raise our family here. And
Yeah, I know an investor that got a letter from somebody very genuine, and it was a multiple offer situation, and she chose them. Of course, it was only a few thousand in between each bid, but she was like, this person really appreciated all the work that I put into this place, and
exactly. Have you ever heard of this, Amina? This tactic of sending a letter with a purchase?
What do you mean, like, to
Well-
the person who bought it?
Well, the buyer making an offer that says, "Oh, I love your house, I love your backyard," kind of thing, to win the deal.
Of course, it's smart.
Okay, now, so we are gonna, I think, let's get our purchase and sale. We're gonna fill this baby out. And, you know, you're just scribbling, so, but we're gonna pretend that we are buying Becky's listing. And Becky just had a baby like 20 weeks ago, little girl named Vivian. And Becky's like, this, she was a waddler. All right. In our electronic signing system, current and future, a lot of things will be automatically filled in for you. Yay. So if I skip over something, I'm gonna focus on the really teachable blanks that need, communication. Like, I'm not gonna say, okay, write in the street address where it says address. Okay? All right. 1B, Renee Dillon and Lynn LaCroix really want us to check, put the X in 1 and attach the legal description inside of a warranty deed. Some agents will copy that or cut around it and just provide the legal description on a piece of paper. I don't know how they get it that way, but so really look at number 4. There are lots of blanks, and when you look in the tax record or something, they don't give you a number for every blank, and so people get confused about what goes where. We want an error-free purchase and sale agreement. Who all came to the Lynn and Renee class? Okay, not everybody. Okay. All I'll say about number 2 is that calls for whole dollars, no cents. In the old days, they actually wrote 100,000. So anyway, whole dollars, no cents. Closing costs, pause, we'll get back to that in a sec. Holder of earnest money, you may recall, we prefer that you put Keller Williams Atlanta perimeter. Whenever you make reference to Keller Williams, you can't just say Keller Williams because each office is independently owned and operated, and we all are unique business entities. So they wouldn't know who you're talking about if you just said Keller Williams. Closing attorney, I feel that best practice is to, when you mention a law firm, that you specify which office, and you can put the name of the attorney. That doesn't really matter. But if you say Wise Nowak, you need to, they need to know. Are we talking the Midtown office, the Alpharetta office, that kind of thing. Earnest Money. So Lynn, our compliance broker, strongly recommends that you always select B. So please check B, and let's fill in. Let's just write in 5,000 for that.
Where is this at? 8?
No, 7. 7B. And we do not want to get our earnest money in cash because the lender can't prove that it's not terrorist money, money laundering, or drug money. So they need traceable funds, meaning it needs to come out of a financial institution account, and people that don't have checks, you can just get your bank for them to cut a check.
So we're taking personal checks no matter
Yes.
what the amount.
Yes.
An
For
antique
earnest money.
clock.
For earnest money.
An antique clock, was on. That was one of my questions on the test.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's earnest money? Oh. Wire transfer. It can be done. Right now we have a really cumbersome process that requires it requires that we get Jean Rawls herself, because she's the owner of the Rawls Group, and we all bank at the same bank, to stop what she's doing and call the bank to authorize the wire transfer. We're trying to get away from that because that's really slow.
Each one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Now, this is just
wire.
If you have a buyer client and they want to wire their earnest money to us, we have to track Jean down. Isn't it the stupidest thing?
It is.
So-
She should be able to just
I
blanket
know.
statement. Keller Williams line of perimeter can wire
Well,
transfer.
well, but let me point out, I mean, we are going to try to modernize this, but when you wire something, it's gone. And if you just said, oh, I trust all MCAs to 100%, give out the right wire account number and that it would come into the office and not their personal,
Yeah.
she's the owner, so
Yeah.
there do have to be some sort of checks and balances. I mean, it's just good business. But what we have now is ridiculous. So we're working on it.
So no cash.
So no cash, and try to avoid wires just because it's so cumbersome. So a personal check, a bank check,
Money order?
how do you get a money order? You put down cash.
So no money order.
So you
Preferably
mean like a
not.
cashier's check.
Cashier's check.
No
Yeah.
cashier's check. Okay.
Mhm. Now, I will tell you that, that's best practice. There are some lenders that are a little softer on, for instance, the money order regulation. You say, hey, can my client do a money order? And they go, oh, sure, especially if it's like 1,000. So I wouldn't accept it without checking with your lender. Okay. Inspection, due diligence. Here's what I want to do. Because we're going to create two offers. And I'm going to show you how we compare them for our client. So everybody on this side of the room put 10 for 10 days of due diligence, and back up in the purchase price, why don't you put 525,000? You're not buying it, your client is buying it. And on this side of the room, let's put 14 days due diligence and 500,000 as the purchase price.
And how many days did they do?
10.
10.
You're 14.
May I ask you, back to the earnest money, how many days for bonding agreement?
Thank you. I skipped that. Either 3 or 5. Remember, the listing agent's going to look at this and either go, or, okay? So obviously, the fewer days, the best. So you kind of have to take into consideration your whole offer and go, wow, are we really lowballing it? We better make it 3, as opposed, or we're paying full price, we'll take 5 days. You have to think that through, because this is an actual, they're gonna look at this and either be happy or sad. But I typically put a B, whatever 1% of the offer price is, and whole dollars, no cents, and 3 days. I think that's a good. We never use 8B2. It's just a boatload of potential for problems and arguments. So I put 0 after the $sign, and that's really all you have to do. Put the 0. Okay, what's the rule on when you have to have a lead-based paint?
1978.
Okay, what about 1978?
Any house built before.
Any built before?
Okay. Now, that's the EPA rule, and if they came to audit us, because they're stricter than just what it says here. It's not only if the house was originally built before 78, but is there any part of it, because sometimes agents will argue with me saying, well, it was renovated in 85. If there's anything that existed on part of the original structure that was built before 78, gotta have it. Now, there's also, everybody, it's popular to have mantles and barn doors and other reclaimed wood furniture that could have traces of lead-based paint. The whole thing about lead-based paint is that if you ingest it, it could do brain damage to especially children. So it's a health and safety thing. So I wish all agents would just think, okay, I would rather everybody in this agreement be safe and have a good brain, so I'm gonna do the lead-based and stop resisting filling it out. Because I'll tell you, and sorry we don't have one, basically the seller says, I have no knowledge of the existence of any lead-based paint in this property. That's all the government wants. Good. Now, of course, if they were to investigate and find out that you knew and you held information, but that's between you and the government, the seller. So let's just cross our T's and dot our I's. Rawls Group feels like that best practice is to do a lead-based paint disclosure for every property. If you represent the buyer, because who knows what could be in there that could have lead-based paint on it. And you, as the fiduciary for the buyer, if the seller's not doing one because it was built after 78, and when you make your offer, you include a partially filled out lead-based paint because you can't fill the whole thing out, can't fill the seller's portion out. On the buyer side, it said they get the choice of you could have a nervous Nellie, a mom of young children that's like, they want to get an inspector to do paint scrapings and send it off to a lab. You never know. So the buyer has the choice of either I'm going to exercise my right to a 10-day period for getting to the bottom of this lead-based paint, or I waive my right. So just, if you were a young mom with children, protect them and give them that option. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So if it was built before 1978, so the buyer would have to pay for that to be inspected?
It's just a disclosure. If the belief these days is it's really hard to find something that hasn't been painted over, and that it's really hard to get to the lead-based paint once it's been painted over. So 99% of the people are going to waive the right, and even if it was built before, I'm just saying it is the right of a particularly nervous client to pay an inspector to do an analysis. I have never seen it done. Your fiduciary, give your buyer that option. Now, I've worked with people that have severe allergies and sensitivities, and oh my gosh, they're like, I can't, don't show me anything with the basement, they might be hyped up more on the mold front, but just for the benefit of your clients, just to protect themselves. Okay, especially children. Okay.
Oh, one last question. I'm sorry. For 8B, 8B1 has paid seller $10 in non-refundable option money, the receipt and sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged.
That is legalese in any contract. I mean a babysitting contract, anything else. There has to be, there are two parties, and there has to be some sort of consideration. That's the legal term. So all real estate transactions, if they to present themselves as being real transactions, say, ooh, this party's paid that party $10. Wink, wink. Nobody does it, but that's why it's in there, so it qualifies. And the thing is, you read one, and then it's you have to have 1 and 2, and for 2 we're going to put 0. So that basically nullifies the whole thing. We're not dealing with the option payment for due diligence period.
So they don't have to give $10 to submit an
Correct,
offer.
correct. Let me tell you, there are other states that actually do that. In North Carolina, in addition to doing an earnest money check, buyers have to do like a $200, they have to pay $200 just to get a due diligence period.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, in North Carolina. Yes. So, I'm telling you, and it may have been that sometime in Georgia history that was more common. But nobody does it these days.
So you
Yeah,
want to
and
go past, we got 14 days, you want to go past 14 days of due diligence?
We advise them not to. There could be a circumstance, if it's sat on the market for a long time and it's not owner occupied, it's just sitting there, and the person wanting to buy it is moving here from Colorado, you know, they might ask for it and the seller's like, sure, what the hey, I haven't got anything else going, you know. So it can
Well,
be
let me
done.
ask you, like if you do a due diligence and then your home inspector says, I suggest you bring a structural engineer in here.
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
Gonna get to that, because that's real important.
Okay.
Okay, number 10, I don't like it, but according to historical terminology, a buyer's agent is considered a selling agent. And when we think sell, we think the seller. So it's very confusing, and I apologize. It's Old English, I don't know what. But anyway, whenever there's a reference in any of these documents to broker, that refers to Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter. You are the designated affiliate, okay? But so for 10A and B, you're not gonna put the agent's name in there, you're gonna put Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter on your side. And yes, when you're the buyer's agent and you're filling out the offer, you fill in everything for the listing agent. You don't leave it for them to fill out. Lazy agents do that. Guess what? They never do it. Then Lynn has to kick back the contract saying, oh, you're missing the listing agent's license number. Fill everything in. So to that point, I'm going to show you how you get that. All right. It's magic. Here we are, we're in the listing. If I click, the listing agent's name is always hyperlinked. Watch this. Ta-ta! Got her license, her email, cell phone, her office address, phone, office ID, firm number, everything you need to complete a purchase and sale agreement. So how did I do that? I went to the agent full listing and I clicked on whee. It is, so when I actually sit down at the computer and start doing this, I open up both my electronic signing system, which will remain nameless, and FMLS, and I'll bring this up so I can copy and paste from it.
And then just to confirm, Stacy, we put Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter in that space, not Lynn LaCroix.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It is confusing, I acknowledge, but in the contract here, the contract reference to broker or brokerage is the entity, not the individual. Okay. Do you know when you would ever choose option 4, designated agent? It's not very common. You may have a guess.
Is that when
Designated,
I'm sorry, is that when they're a customer, not a client?
like when an agent is doing contract with like a certain company, like
Nope.
or
Okay.
property management.
If you're working with them as a customer, you've got the listing, unrepresented buyer comes in, and they know exactly what they want to offer. And they just say, I don't want an agent, just will you fill out the form for me? Okay, dictate, here we go. You are representing them as a customer. You're basically a scribe. You don't give them any advice. You don't give them any, they can't ask you any questions other than to define a term. So then you might have Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter on both sides, and the buyer you're representing as a customer and the seller as a client. That is acceptable. We feel that the better approach, because we feel like every buyer deserves their own agent, is that you say, I'd love to connect you with an agent in my office, maybe somebody in this class. That's what we did with my contemporaries. We agreed that if, and typically what happens is you have a listing, you're holding your own open house. Before that day, Martha Freiberg would call me and say, hey, if an unrepresented buyer comes in, will you, and they want to make an offer, will you handle them for me? Great. If it goes the distance, and they don't always go the distance, but if it closes, I would give Martha 25% or more, sometimes 40%, you agree in advance, of whatever commission I earned, because I did nothing. Well, I didn't do anything to find the client, So, yes, you don't just give it away. And I think in that circumstance, actually 40% is appropriate too. So y'all be nice to each other, and maybe you can.
How do you write that up?
There is, you know how we have an exclusive buyer brokerage agreement? There is, well, with the, currently we do it in the green sheet, so I've got to think, it might be different in command, but it has, the clients know nothing. You may or may not know this, once you go binding, usually initiated by the listing agent, will send to the other agent a commission agreement. And hold on, back to this. That in this case, we've got, they've already declared in FMLS that they're going 3%. So that's all the clients need to know. Then in the commission agreement, you would say, okay, the total commission is 6, the buyer's agent gets 3, and usually you don't settle up your referral fee at the closing, or it's with the office. Ellie handles that. Okay, so the answer to when would you use number 4 is when it is a double QAP transaction. Both agents are in our office. That's what designated agency means.
Oh, yeah.
You heard that. Yes. So agents at First Atlanta, you're just both representing your peeps as clients. If it's a double QAP, and again, it doesn't make any difference except to the Georgia Real Estate Commission. That the selling broker and the listing broker is going to be the same, and you check 4 and 4, and then you just put the names of the agents.
Gotcha.
It's not that frequent, but yes,
So you said we fill out the listing broker's information.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know if it's a client or a customer?
Great question. My best practice is assume a client,
Okay.
check it, and if it's not, the onus is on them to correct it, or to tell you so you can correct it. So yes, go ahead and check, assume a client. Because again, if you leave it blank, they never fill it out, and then Lynn has to send it back.
So in this case, in this transaction, we're gonna check 4, because they're both.
Good question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and do, yeah. So then you have a record of what that looks like. And so your name is on the buyer side, and Becky Evans is on the listing broker side. Cool. Okay. Now get out your highlighters.
Okay, so wait a minute, on the listing broker side, we'll still put Keller Williams Atlanta.
Right, because we're gonna actually fill it out as if it's a double QAP.
Okay.
So both sides say the same thing, basically.
Yes. Okay. We're not going to read everything but I'm gonna tell you what I want you to highlight. Some of them we'll read, and some of them I want you to read later, but I really want you to keep this, and it's this particular purchase and sale, because it answers your questions when your clients say, well, do I have to blah, blah, blah. The answer's in the contract. What happens when the answer's in the contract? I'm telling you, and the problem is agents don't read it because it's really small print. So, if you would follow it, so everybody got a highlighter?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So now we are on page 2, and I will, so what we're doing right now, the main thing is just so you mark the really killer verbiage. So we're not trying to necessarily learn or memorize all this, okay? Item 3. I want you to just sort of put brackets around A, seller's contribution at closing. Because you deal with it every time you fill out a purchase and sale. And the general bottom line is a lender doesn't want the seller to pay the buyer's down payment. You know, they want them to have some skin in the game. But they're fine with the seller paying for attorney's fees, even escrow amounts, prorated amounts and stuff like that. You don't have to know all the fine details of what is and what isn't an appropriate closing cost. Let the lender tell you. Because it can vary from mortgage to mortgage. So there are 2 really critical things in this paragraph. On the 3rd line, go over to the right and you see the sentence beginning in such event. I just want you to underline any unused portion of the seller's monetary contribution shall remain the property of the seller. What that means is if you ask for $10,000 in closing costs and they agree, and you get to the day of closing and closing costs are only $9,000, the buyer doesn't get the extra $1,000. The seller does. They're always disappointed and mad. So don't get yourself into that position. That's why we're having that conversation. So you don't look dumb, unprofessional. What? I thought, because in the buyer's mind, that's helping them pay for the house, and now you just gypped them. Not really, but, you know. Okay, so don't over ask for closing costs. Make sure you're not going above. The other.
So are points included in that? Because you said
They are a
All
legitimate
right.
thing that a
Okay.
seller can pay for. Correct. Some of you in this room have deeper knowledge about mortgages, but not everybody does. So, anyway, just say that. Okay.
Yeah, but since I did, rules have changed a lot.
I'm trying to think if there's. We'll leave it just with that one thing I wanted to point out. So, warning, if the seller agrees to pay too much in closing costs, your buyer is not going to benefit from the extra. Okay. Buyers and sellers always want to know who's going to pay the transfer tax and the all that sort of stuff. So I want you to highlight in B, buyer shall pay, and Georgia property transfer tax, title search, and any other costs, fees, and charges to close this transaction. You can negotiate to get closing costs covered, but initially it's going to be on the buyer's side of the settlement. It's not the seller's responsibility to pay those things. Okay,
And it has to be a monetary amount in the blank, right? We can't put all closing or,
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Some people that didn't come to Ignite will just put like 3% or something like that. Mm-mm. They're, look at the blanks, and if there's a dollar sign at the beginning, they want a number. If there's a percentage sign at the end of the line, they want a percentage number. So, and if they're none, then they're probably looking for words, text. Okay, prorations, and some of this stuff you'll probably only have to go over with first-time home buyers, not all your buyers, but you should know. As Renee said in sales meeting on, and we're going to take a break at 11:30. Sales meeting on Tuesday, this is the time of year when property tax bills have been mailed, most of the counties. What that means is a seller cannot sell, well, lawyers are not allowed to change ownership of property without paying the county. That because before they had that rule, you had all these sellers say, well, I paid it. Buyer's like, well, the seller paid it, so then the buyer didn't want to pay it because the seller said they paid it. Arguments. So they came up with this rule that the closing attorney has to collect the funds to pay. So whereas the rest of the year, they say, okay, estimated taxes are $2,000. We're closing on June 30th, so I'm going to add the seller on paper is paying the buyer $1,000, half the bill, and the buyer will be, when the time comes, paying the other half. In August and September, the seller has to pay. They don't pay the. They're only responsible for January 1 through the day of closing, but they do have to cough it up. And
Even if they've already paid it.
well,
They haven't paid it.
here's the problem. The lawyers cannot take the word of the seller. They can't even look at the seller's bank statement that shows that the check has cleared, because people have figured out how to get around the system. All rules are always made up when somebody's been bad.
Can they just not? Can they
So-
not go to the county?
The best thing
Right.
I've heard in life.
So they can only accept the word of the county saying, yep, we've got it. So if your seller, like I just got mine yesterday, and if I paid it immediately, which I'm not gonna, but if I paid it immediately, and then I was selling in, say, October 15th, fine, the county would definitely be able to prove it by then. So you have to think strategically. If you have the seller, and it's about this time, say, don't pay your tax bill, don't pay your tax bill, because they're going to collect it at closing. If they have, and it was, and that they can't prove that the county has processed it, sadly, they have to write another check at closing and wait for the county to refund them the overage.
You don't know how long
It
that's
is-
going to be, huh?
It is not happy.
Oh, it's
Now, if you're representing the buyer, it ain't your problem. But if you're representing the seller, so that's why
It's
from
also
a,
the same with some of your escrows and all that. You're like, oh my gosh, you have to come up with way more money. And then they say, Bill, you'll get refunded.
I know. It's not fun. So anticipate, nobody likes to part with their money, especially if they really shouldn't have to. So this is why we have listing consultations and buyer consultations to warn them in advance. So if you're taking a listing in July, I would definitely say when you get your tax bill, don't pay it, just hold on to it. If you think you're going to sell before October, whatever, when it's due.
But that's for people who don't have an escrow
Right.
set up, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's
True.
people that.
I feel like most people probably have an estimate. I don't.
I agree. Most people, it's more with your older
Yeah.
sellers that have already paid off their mortgage,
yeah.
or even investors that paid cash. I'm telling you, they have to pay as well. So those are the categories. But yes, anybody that has a mortgage, not a deal. So, the attorney is still going to pay the taxes, but it's coming from the escrow account, so the seller doesn't have to come out of pocket. Yes,
Isn't
ma'am.
that an easy thing to verify with the county, or is it not?
It's not that it's easy or hard. It's how long does it take them to process your check?
Okay. So it could have been how soon you paid it to when you're closing.
Right. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the difficulty is process timing.
So you told them not to pay their taxes and just let them.
Because they're
let the
typically not
attorney
due till
figure it out.
October.
Let the attorney figure it out at closing.
Mm-hmm.
Just have them prepared that they're gonna have to pay it. And they only
You
pay
have got it.
pay from the time. that
January
they-
1 until the day of closing.
Okay.
They'll be responsible for that amount. Definitely. And that applies to annual HOA dues, any other annualized thing. You know, the seller pays for January 1 to the date of closing, buyer day of closing till December 31st. And don't ask me who's really paying for the day of closing, because I knew that when I took my state exam, but I don't remember that. And I don't need to, because other people do that, you know, like the attorneys and they do that. They specialize. Okay. Okay. In number 4, closing date in possession. 3 more minutes and we stop for a break. A, the first line. Lynn talked about, again, we're not going to talk about this because it's kind of complicated, so please just highlight what I suggest you highlight. Start with the word unilaterally and highlight unilaterally extend the closing date for 8 days upon notice to the other party. Stop. Then I want you to just highlight the number 1, and a few words over title objections, and then skip down 2 lines and highlight 2, and highlight mortgage lender, and the next line, or the closing attorney is delayed. The next line, highlight 3, buyer has not received required estimates or disclosures. And lastly, the very last sentence in its entirety, which says that right to unilaterally, meaning don't have to have any agreement, extend the closing 8 days, can only be used one time, and I don't know why. But that's the deal. So the majority of agents out there, I swan it, think that if you got stuff going on, you need to delay closing for many different reasons, that you say, oh, we'll do the 8-day unilateral. Now, now, if you talk to the other side and say, can we delay closing, and everybody, and both sides are agreeable. I mean, there's a legit, hey, a water pipe burst and you want to get it repaired. Something, both parties agree, no problem. And you do a mutual agreement to extend closing date, no problem. It's just this unilateral, the law only, it's basically when it's no fault of the buyer or seller. So it's, anyway, read those later. It rarely comes into play, but agents get tempted to use that card and they use it inappropriately. Okay. Holder of earnest money. This is really important. Oh, let's wait. Yep. All right. Break. 10 minutes. Come back at 11:40. Yay. You jumping jacks. All right. There are permissions involved that we may need to modify so that you get the icons.
Look at you, what a pretty
If
gift.
you would, no, it's not reviewing, is it? Okay. If you would, usually, yes, that's, and I think they do it for each document. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm okay. I twisted my ankle this morning at about 6 a.m. when I was out with horses. And I twisted my knee. From the ankle up to the knee. I found a foxhole or a roll hole. I stepped in it. And
I don't think it's instantaneous, so I'd say check back in an hour.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad we killed that out.
Yep.
Oops.
Are they in your own property?
that's cool. Yeah, it's a cool way.
Let us see what she put together. Oh my gosh, how cute are you? I'm looking at your gift. Okay, that is. Oh my God.
I haven't been here.
Well, I have been too. I'm just gonna try to go to the kitchen, but
Yeah, I need to go there too because I have
gosh. And you've been there 20-some years?
Yeah, I started off as a volunteer and came on staff as his assistant like 7 years ago. Oh yeah, I got, so you remember yesterday she kept holding stuff? So I got her a clipboard that closes so she could put the keys in the clipboard and have everything all in one thing. And then there's just like pens and thank you cards. And stuff like that. Yeah, but she's not in there.
How sweet are you to do that?
But I really, really appreciate it because I don't often. It takes me a while to make decisions. And here, I mean, it's just packs of pens, Post-its, thank you cards. Oh, and the little sample wipes.
Forget how cold it is in here.
It's just sitting on top of her.
It's colder in here.
Oh, and then
That's the reason why I got
That is
sick.
so sweet for you to do that.
On your set. I'm feeling
I feel like it's going
on. There's something going.
Yeah. Do you take elderberries or
No, I've had before, but you really think it works?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lady who makes it.
Oh, really?
So I go and then in the winter I take it every day and I give it to my daughter every day.
I love the taste. It's just
Delicious.
really good.
It's delicious.
Okay.
Well, Tiffany's
Ladies.
missed yesterday.
I know.
Have
was
y'all seen what she is
Why
put
watch
together?
for her?
No.
I want her to break down.
Wow.
I was picking it up. A snippet.
I just saw the
And,
whites
and it's no card. Okay, but here's what she said.
Oh,
Here's a clipboard with a place for your keys, pens, lockbox key, and more all in one. You know, she had like hanging over. I mean, how sweet and cute and thoughtful is this?
That is so nice.
She really changed her life yesterday.
Good.
Because we're in the beginning of class, she was like all confused. We were all talking about
Yeah,
ourselves.
right.
I talked about Woody Harrelson, and she talked about something way more important.
What's more important than what is
Well, you know, it's so funny. Back then, he had lots of hair, and you know, went bald like he became.
Yeah, I have a funny plain story and weird.
Yeah.
It was one of my first trips as like the head flight attendant, and I was really young, and we were going to Moscow, and they all go to the Moscow Film Fest, all the stars, and the crew was really old, and they were mean to me. As a young
The crew was mean to you.
the flight attendant crew, and I'm
Oh,
like,
no, I hear
I'm
that's still the
working.
case. I have a friend who went back into the business. She
well,
goes,
I'm
God,
old,
they're so
I'm
mean.
like old now, so I'm
So now you're
I'm-
mean.
You're the
so
mean
now and they were like being so mean to me, and I'm sweating and everything. And I remember just him standing there, and he's like, somebody said something real rude, and I had enough, and I said something real rude back to this guy, and his name was Paul. This was 20 years ago, I still remember it. And he's like, oh, if you put the teapots down on the bottom, then I have to bend down to get them. I was so mad, and I was like, Paul, you're going to have to bend down sometime. And then I just turned I just finished what I was doing, and there was Woody Harrelson standing there in a hat.
Was he
And
waiting to go to the restroom or something?
Yes, waiting for the bathroom, and he was like, you really told him or something, or I can't even remember what he said because it was just so and I didn't even know who he was. And another flight crew was like, did you know who that was? I said, I have no idea.
Yeah. When I met him, I went to one of the taping of Cheers to watch.
Okay.
We only went out like 2 times.
Okay.
But he was taping Cheers, but it hadn't aired yet. So he was an unknown.
Yeah.
And then that became, it was so funny, like within 6 to 8 months, of course I never spoke to him again after all that. I was like, oh my God. You know, sort of seeing Cheers on with him. And
the boat. You could be.
he was funny though. He was a nice guy. But their father went to prison for murder. He was a hitman.
Who? Wow.
Woody Harrelson, we're talking about.
That's
Oh,
her actor.
yeah.
He's an
The axe murderer that you know.
He's an ex-boyfriend. I went to look up time before he was real. But anyway, and he was talking to me about that. And his brother was there. We're all at his house, just hanging out and all. And I'm like, their father was a hitman.
Yeah.
I think he's in prison for life. He may be dead by now, but I was like, oh my God, I don't think we can quite trump your story, Woody.
He had a certain personality.
Yeah, he had a great personality, and he played that role so perfectly on Cheers.
Yeah.
And,
He's a really good actor.
Yeah, he's done some great stuff. But
I like the one where he's
So you used to live in LA?
I only lived out there for a year and a half during my sophomore and junior year. My sister lived out there, and I at the time had gone to University of Alabama, and I was like, I'm from Birmingham. I was like, I think I'm done. I want to go up there. And I only was going to go up there for the summer, just have a good summer, and I worked and all, and kept up classes at UCLA. And I just was like, I think I'm going to stay a little longer.
Yeah,
So I went to
of
Santa
course.
Monica Junior College for a while, but then the reality hit was, where am I going, this is expensive, because my sister was moving. I was like, oh. So I went back home. But it was fun. I mean, that was the time you can get on the elevator, and Madonna and Sean Penn were standing next to you at the mall elevator. I mean, they were everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
They still are.
They
Still are. See, they live there.
Even here, there's so many movies on the plane all the time. There's people.
I don't see anybody.
I don't know who people are anymore. I really don't.
You better get your People magazine out. I could look at a People magazine right now and couldn't tell you who any of them are.
Exactly. That's how I feel. So that's why I don't even know.
All right, let's get back at it.
Do you mind if I eat while we talk?
Yeah, all during class, eat, drink. I mean, if you
survival.
have to, run to the restroom, do what you gotta do. Like, Sherry got a call, she stepped out, perfect. That's, do what you gotta do. Okay, Earnest Money is huge. Okay, who are we missing? Mina and, wasn't somebody else sitting there?
She moved up. Deborah.
Okay. Follow the bouncing Deborah.
Exactly.
Okay, Earnest Money. Earnest Money is a prepayment of what you're paying for the house. So when your client writes a check for Earnest Money, it's going to be credited on the settlement statement as effectively part of their down payment. There's some things that even agents that have gone through Ignite still are confused about. So, on page 2, number 5, the first sentence, please highlight. The earnest money shall be deposited into the holder's escrow or trust account. That check is going to be cashed. There is no such thing as, can you hold it for a week or, nothing. So when you have your buyer consult, you're going to need to provide a check for earnest money, and we decided, y'all said 3, y'all said 5 days of binding agreement date. Okay, let me just keep going. On the second line, so you don't want to get to that magic moment, oh, I love this house order, do this, and you say, oh, you gotta provide an earnest money check. Oh, I've got to access my blah 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 account, and it takes a week, and so you want to converse with your buyer before the magic moment that there's an earnest money check is going to be needed. Okay, so on the second line, please start highlighting not later than 5 banking days after the binding agreement date. I'm skipping here under, because I hate those words. And then continue again, or B, 5 banking days after the date it is actually received, if it is received after the binding agreement date. So what that means, that there's more that we're going to highlight. If Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter is a holder of earnest money, which we advise putting that, if you represent the buyer. That means Ellie Locklear is required by law to deposit your client's earnest money check, either A or B, in banking days, or they're not weekends or federal holidays. So she has a deadline, and if she can't fulfill her legally binding obligations, the office and Lynn LaCroix our licenses are at risk. This is really serious. The Georgia Real Estate Commission reams brokerages for not handling earnest money appropriately. It's almost like it's a bigger deal than the closing money. I don't know. It's just a big dang deal. So none of this, hey honey, I didn't know, I didn't know it had to be in by then. Well, who filled out the purchase and sale for you? You know, when you say it is going to be turned in, and so you have a deadline for turning it into the office, and then Ellie has a deadline for depositing it in our office escrow account, so it's separate from operating funds. Like it's the most important thing in your life. It should be the most important thing in your life to fulfill those obligations. And
we bring it up here.
Yes. Now we're working on. You know how I told you we're working on enabling wire transfers. We're also working on remote deposits, electronic deposits. We bank with Fidelity, and they have developed an app. And like I've done one for one of my clients. I'm in the beta test, and they've made application with Apple to have their app approved, and they're in line to get that app approved. And as soon as that happens,
Is it an app for agents only, or
no? For agents, yeah.
So it's like Cash App or something?
It's like what?
Cash App?
No, it would be more like my Wachovia, my Wells Fargo, that I can do a mobile deposit, where you take a picture of the front and the back of the check.
Oh, okay.
For that.
Okay.
That's what it's like. But just imagine you don't have to drive in here. Oh, yay!
That would be amazing.
Cannot wait for that to come through. So that'll be great.
That would be really nice.
I will tell you, if you're in the situation, you live in Dunwoody, client lives in Woodstock, and they're buying a home in Douglasville, not pretty. So think ahead. Some agents will just say to their client, well, you have to get it into my office by such and such. I guess technically you could say that, but you think you're endearing yourself to your client? And probably not. I would typically try to organize a rendezvous, split the difference. You don't have to do all the driving, but at least offer to do half of the driving. Cynthia Pierce, number one agent most of the time in our office, she went to, because her time is money, so rather than driving to pick up earnest money checks, she got herself her own FedEx account, pre-printed air bills. So when her client wants to make an offer, she leaves them with an air bill that's already addressed to her at this office, and an envelope, and they could just go home and pop their check in there and put it in a FedEx thing, and it's going to be there the next day.
Because all the documents are done e-doc, they're signed electronically, so that's the only thing that is going to be paper. Got it. Okay.
Now, y'all don't have to run out and get FedEx accounts. I was giving you the kind of the
That's when you're so
range of
busy.
options. Exactly.
We all hope
and you don't
to
have
be
time
FedEx
to go
accounts. We all
drive
hope to be FedEx
to get that
accounts.
earnest money check. Please discourage clients from trying to mail their earnest money to us, because we're in an office building as opposed to just the building is freestanding. The mail delivery here is to a common thing, and they put them in slots, and we don't have any control over when it's delivered, so you might miss your deadlines if they use the U.S. mail. And again, it's simply because we're in an office building. So really, I guess if we were in a shopping center, you might have the same problem where they just have a kind of a community distribution. So don't use the U.S. mail. So sometimes it's not fun. Plan ahead.
Do we
But-
get like a receipt when we turn it in of some sort, or you take a picture or something?
What you do, because the listing agent is gonna wanna see a photocopy.
Right.
So there is a, y'all feel like walking? Let's just walk for a minute, just to go into the training room. I mean, this is the training room. We're the entrance. Let's not.
I don't feel like walking. I just came from an acupuncturist. I turned my knee this morning, so no, I'm not gonna be walking. This is too much, too much. how was your field trip?
Wonderful.
Good.
Oh,
Go girl.
Eliza, I'll be going later today to get my blood ticket.
Oh, I am such a fainter.
I am
Stacy,
too. And my
I didn't
husband
mean
is
to
too, and
miss
we're
you
going
going
together. So we're gonna be bed next to bed.
You've been there and done that, haven't you?
Well, actually, I went to the acupuncturist prior to here. I twisted my foot this morning out in the pasture, so I had to go get some
Sorry.
pain relief. So I'm hanging out.
Okay, we are, okay, the rest of what we're gonna highlight is gonna go very quickly. All right. At the,
Thank you.
if either your buyer or you don't turn in the earnest money by when you say it'll be turned in, such that Ellie then can't meet her 5 banking day, she is required by law to send notice, which is always in writing, to the seller and the buyer. The buyer gets 3 days to fix the problem, banking days. And if they don't, the seller can say, that's it, terminate.
We're done.
So if your buyer is maybe a little disorganized, flighty, whatever, the seller can, so if you may have fought really hard to get binding, don't let your buyer lose out. I mean, it may be their fault they haven't turned it in, but still, you need to warn them in advance. That money has to be in by this deadline, and it is going to be deposited. And let's say 4 days later, you decide to terminate because the roof's falling in. They can't get their earnest money back until their check clears. That's just business.
I've been through that, yeah.
That's just business. So another trap that new agents find themselves in, they go binding, turn in the check, and they proceed to the inspection, and then the basis just got horrible mold, and the buyer's like, I can't take it. So terminate. And then you go on and you're still shopping for houses, and they find another one, and they're ready to put an offer on that one. But their earnest money check hasn't cleared, so Ellie can't give it back to them, and they, so you got to know that that's the deal, and it's in the contract. Okay. Next thing to highlight, it's in number 5. It is the.
I have a question, Stacey.
Can I?
Given that situation, they couldn't just take the earnest money and.
Glad you brought that up.
Use it for
That is
something
also
else.
that. Nope. Earnest money goes with the property. That earnest money is designated and papered up that it belongs to that property. You cannot transfer an earnest money to the next property. It would be nice, and everybody wants to do that, but it is against the law.
Even if we filled that out and didn't put an address? Okay. Okay.
Do you want Ellie in the office to lose her license?
No.
It is against the law. I don't know why these are the laws. You can't do it. And it frustrates every agent that forgets that that's the case. Because not everybody has the funds, the liquid funds, to do 2 earnest money checks. I mean, that's normal. Okay, so on the 4th line of item 5, underline, holder shall not return the earnest money until the check has cleared the account on which the check was written. Anyway, further on, it gives the remedy if your client's earnest money check bounces or they just don't turn it in. Ellie has to give notice to both sides, and the buyer has 3 days to fix it, or the seller has the right to terminate, doesn't have to. Okay.
Now, Stacy, when they terminate, let's say that does happen and the seller terminates, at that point, earnest money,
Okay, let's read the contract.
Oh, sorry.
Can I have one of those? So,
Okay, I'll give you mine, because I wasn't expecting Caroline, so I guess I didn't make enough. Here is, I don't need this,
thank
There's
you.
some right here on the back
I
table.
can make one after
There's a whole
class. I
stack.
just want to follow.
but that's not what she's looking for.
Oh.
There was lots.
So say the question again? If the.
Oh, that if, let's say the buyer hadn't turned in the earnest money on time and the seller chooses to terminate,
Okay.
do they have a right to the earnest money? And I think the answer is yes, so I'm digging into the contract. All the answers are in the contract. All the answers, all the rules, the governing rules are in the contract.
Does a seller have the right to the earnest money?
Correct. All right, here
I
we
believe
go.
that is a yes.
Hold on, I'm reading. Okay. Buyer shall have 3 banking days from the day of receiving notice to cure the default, and if buyer does not do so, seller may, within 7 days thereafter, terminate this agreement upon notice to buyer. It does not say that seller has a right to that earnest money.
Correct.
Because they never went by, well, they went by, but it doesn't say. So I don't think, they just have the right to terminate. So it's more, buyer's gonna lose the property that they fell in love with.
Right. But their earnest money's coming back to them.
Well, we never had it because it only gets to this point if they never turned it in or it bounced, the check bounced. So we never had the funds, so they never parted with their funds.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Number 6, buyer shall have the right to select the closing attorney to this transaction. You will see in FMLS listings, in Georgia MLS, listing agents put in either the private or public remarks, closing attorney shall be blah, blah, blah. They cannot force that. Now, there's a lot of, like, if you wanted to put, it's not illegal for you to put, all closings will be with Gannick, PC, Renee Dillon, attorney. You can put that, but you can't force it, So when offices have affiliated agreements with either attorneys or lenders, and they just want to funnel business their way as a favor, just to support them, they sometimes put that, but they can't make you do that. So the buyer it's the buyer's call to choose the closing attorney. The other thing you need to know is that, the situation where that doesn't work is if the seller is a business, a corporation,
Like
an investor, a flip. Usually they want you to close with their attorney because they've already done title search and all this stuff, and it does not make sense to try to buck that. Because it could cost your buyer more if you try to argue that. So just know when you see those closing must be with blah blah blah, check and see who the seller is, and if it's just an individual, they cannot make you. Now here's a distinction. Sometimes, I don't see this very often anymore, I saw it more in 2013-14, the listing agent might say in the private remarks, buyer must get pre-approved with Certainty Home Loans. They don't have to use them, but the seller may have said, they just may not trust Quicken or Hooflung Do Mortgage they've never heard of. And they can not accept your offer if they don't just get pre-approved. But they can do that.
And would that
But
need
you're
to
not
be-
using them for the mortgage. You just,
Does that need to be on the listing in order for
yeah,
that to
you would see that in generally the private remarks.
And if it's not on there, is it something that the seller?
I've never
agent
seen it
needs-
come up after the fact.
Okay, because we had that experience, but I was curious.
Well, where it could come up is when you made an offer, if in the finance contingency exhibit you referenced a lender that nobody ever heard of and it made them nervous, at that point, upon receipt of the offer, they might go, we're not gonna accept this if you don't at least get pre-approved with
Gotcha.
certain mortgage.
Okay.
But, so, you gotta understand the why behind it. It's, when it's somebody they've never heard of. Cause once you decide, you know, you wanna make it to the finish line. Okay.
I
On
just
the-
hate it when they have the closing attorney, properties 20 miles this way, closing attorney is 20 miles that way.
Absolutely.
And
Hate
it's
that.
convenient for the lender,
Or somebody.
or the
Seller,
the buyer's agent location. Like, but it's not convenient for all of us who were owning and buying this house.
absolutely. Cause you've got, the agents could be, their offices could be anywhere, the property could be anywhere, and
And
the.
Atlanta traffic is everywhere.
Exactly. So it is very frequent that if possible, you pick a closing attorney that's convenient to your client's work rather than the property, you know? So, yeah, it's
And do some closing attorneys offer a discount if they've already run the title and everything? Like I see that sometimes, yeah. So
on
that's why
just
they
the
put
title
it
search
on.
expense,
Yeah.
yes. So that's why it doesn't pay if somebody's already done that.
Yeah, to figure out why they don't want to use
Mhm.
that.
Okay, again in number 6, the third line, middle of it, the law firm shall be deemed to be the closing attorney. So when you fill out the offer, if you just put Renee Dillon, according to the contract, the attorney would be Gannick PC. They're just making that distinction. And you do not have to put an individual attorney's name if it's, you just get, you know, Gannick PC, or Wise and Nowak, or Campbell and Brandon. But put which office, you know, Glenridge office, or whatever. And you will see co-op agents, non-colorings, not doing that. Just Campbell and Brandon. And somebody's got to make an extra phone call to find out which office. You know, because how can a seller decide whether they want to agree to all the terms when you haven't told them? You know, because that is a term where the closing's going to be. Because that's something you can counter on, which we're going to counter. Okay. Just another, you should have gotten this in your pre-license, but the closing attorney, this is the third from the bottom line, the closing attorney shall represent the mortgage lender in any transaction in which the buyer obtains mortgage financing. So, the closing attorney needs to be acceptable to the lender, but they don't represent the seller or the buyer, they represent the lender. If it is an all-cash purchase, then the attorney does represent the buyer. Okay, next page. We're just going to highlight these. Number 7, Earnest Money, entitlement to Earnest Money. This is like, who gets it if the deal falls apart? First line, buyer shall be entitled to earnest money upon the, and I just want you to highlight the 1, 2, 3, and 4. And basically it's buyers can get their earnest money back if they terminate before a deadline. Like if you're in due diligence, you can terminate for any reason. Get your earnest money back. You're through due diligence. Appraisal comes back, it's low, seller refuses to reduce the price. Buyer's not going to pay, come up with cash for the difference. Buyer can terminate, cite that it's because of the appraisal, they're still within the appraisal contingency, get their earnest money back. Finance contingency. I don't know, something happens and the lender says we can't finance you because we had all your documentation, but our underwriter changed rules or whatever. It was not the fault of the buyer that they didn't turn something in a timely fashion, or they went out and charged a room full of furniture on rooms to go and screwed up their debt to income ratio. So the buyer didn't do anything, but something changed, and they just said, we can't do a thing. Buyer can terminate, get their earnest money back, no harm, no foul. Then it's, all the way to the finish line. So I have had agents call me and say, my buyer got cold feet. It's, we're supposed to close in 3 days. Can they terminate? Anybody can terminate. What's it gonna cost you? So we're gonna get into, that comes under the heading default. But anyway, so in general, if the buyer terminates within a deadline, before a deadline, they can get their earnest money back. Unless you specify otherwise, when do all deadlines end?
12 a.m. 11:59 p.m.
11:59 p.m. Now, that's what it is, unless you want to protect your later evenings and say all deadline, you can put as a special step, all deadlines shall end at 8 p.m. And if the seller agrees to it, then by heck, 8 p.m. is it. It keeps you from those last minute, which don't happen all the time. Okay. People wonder about this, but it's still in A, the last sentence. Let's say they haven't terminated, they're going the distance. Otherwise, the earnest money shall be applied towards the purchase price of the property at closing. Or if other funds are used to pay the purchase price, then the earnest money shall be returned to buyer. Okay, a VA loan. VA still has to put earnest money. But they're not, yes, they have closing costs, but let's say you got the seller to pay almost all the closing costs. So they've fronted $3,000 and it's not needed at closing, the closing attorney writes them a check for $3,000.
VA.
So they absolutely, the VA is 100%
They
financing.
take earnest money, but
Yes.
no down payment, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I was like, what?
So, and it doesn't have to be a VA loan. It could be somebody, parents, whatever, stepping in and covering all the funds that are needed at closing, such that now too many dollars have gone in on the buyer side. Attorney remits it to the buyer. So, the answer's in the contract. Okay. Now, we are not going to talk about B, because it's very complicated. But if the buyer wants to terminate because it appraised low after the appraisal contingency had expired, or they just decided they didn't like the mold in the basement and due diligence had expired, there is a process for, when you terminate, when the buyer wants to terminate, unilateral termination, and you say, okay, we're doing it because we have the right within this or that contingency, and then at the bottom of the page, earnest money should be returned to buyer. Well, if the seller decides to resist, because they have to sign that bottom portion. And I've had ornery sellers before. We had to terminate because we didn't know it was in a flood zone, and once we got the quote on the flood insurance, my client couldn't qualify for his mortgage any longer. It threw him over. Woo, that seller was an MAD and thought when we terminated, he should keep the earnest money. So here's what happens. There's this 10-day period. So we sent over this termination and release of funds, and they're like, no, we're not following. We're not signing it. Or he wasn't signing it. So I send it to Lynn, because we were holding earnest money. You would send it to whoever's holding earnest money. We have a dispute. That person reviews the facts of the case and says, this is how I think it should be, I think which party should get it, and sends a notice, which is an email to both parties. The clock starts ticking and they have 10 days to go, okay, we accept your decision. And if they don't come back and say no, then at the end of 10 days, that decision stands. This paragraph B goes into all the details of that. Just know 10-day period. If there's a dispute about who gets the earnest money after either party terminates, it's going to go through a 10-day period, and it's very spelled out exactly what happens. And the reason is to not have the seller and the buyer fighting with each other and not fighting with the agents, to take it to a third party to figure it out. They're not fun because people are mad at this point, So when do we want if it's necessary, when do we want our buyers to terminate? Prior to deadlines. So it's real clear.
Can I make a statement? If someone can't qualify because they're PMI, they bought too high of a house.
Okay.
Because PMI is not that expensive. You're like, that goes back to pre-qualified.
Right.
You're correct. You are correct. And this is we started off by saying it's a big deal to your buyers, and it's emotional, it's really important. So, acknowledge that and treat it like it's a big deal. Well, it can be a real stretch for some people, to qualify, and everybody's money is a kind of a private thing. So be very considerate when issues of financing and
well, and as a seller, I would question if that was the real reason. They just got their banker to say that's the reason, because it's just too.
No. They can lose their mortgage lending license.
Okay.
They have a form. There's one form for the loan denial letter. Well, letter and form. And every lender in the country has to use the same form, and you say exactly, and they can be audited, and they have to be able to prove that the reason they state. So, and guess why they have that? Because somebody was a bad guy in the past and lied on behalf of their clients. Mm-hmm. Now they have really strict regulations. So I haven't met a lender that'll take that risk. They don't want to lose their livelihood for just one client.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Now, I did not tell you when you came in that we are highlighting these critical, and if you don't have a highlighter, I will try to make a copy for you, which you missed. Okay. We are almost at the end. In the inspections, number 8. I point this out because it came up once. Obviously, you wouldn't schedule an inspection and not tell the seller that you're doing it, but so they point out you do need to tell the seller. Both the buyer and the buyer's agent, and obviously the inspector, have a right to enter the property. Had a seller, wasn't my seller, but an agent had a seller that didn't want that buyer to come in her house. Mm-hmm. The inspector could come in, but not the buyer. And so the agent comes to me and, what do I tell her? The answer's in the contract. Show her this. Yeah, I'm telling you, people are crazy.
Yes, they are.
And
She does know they're gonna own that house.
It's got to indicate something like, I know they're going to terminate on it, something. Good point, though, Sherry. Okay, so yes, the buyer, and in fact, this enter the property even up until if they want to come into the property to do some sort of inspection. Let's say they decide you go through due diligence, everything, fine, and then later they go, oh, I forgot to ask for a termite inspection because the seller doesn't have a bond. the buyer still has a right to enter the property and have a termite inspector come in, you know, up to the day of closing. Obviously, you want to be courteous about the scheduling, but up to, they have the right to come and keep coming and doing inspections. They don't have the right to keep coming back to take measurements.
I had that problem.
Now, you know, you gotta see how, it's a lot easier if it's vacant, but that's why Tashma, I'm sure, told you to carry a tape measure. And so, you know, anytime you're in there, like during the inspection, if you get there before the inspector's finished and ready for you, run around and take measurements.
Or she said do the little
I had a
feet
buyer
thing.
like that, wanted everything I am talking nightmare buyer. She wanted everything. She was calling Bill like every 5 minutes about this, and this, and when I was going to, finally I just said, she can, just let her come in. I can't even, I mean, like, I get it, I understand. I was trying to be sympathetic, but she wanted everything. She had, and she had different bids coming in, so she had contractors coming all day.
Okay, so when, you know, the property is, or let's just say the property is fine, but they want to renovate. So they want to have contractors coming in. Just put yourself in the seller's shoes. I mean, ask your buyer to put themselves in the seller's shoe.
It's just so annoying.
You know, consolidate. You know, so it's like, okay, we need everybody come on Friday or something like that. Because it's not going to be fun if everybody gets
I literally
sideways.
left water out on the porch for her and like a snack box and said, you can sit out here. She wanted to renovate the backyard. I was like, you can sit out here all day and wait for your contractors, but I'm in and out of the house. I can't have you here. Like, she was literally there. Like,
it happens. Now, Amina, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So
By law, can they enter by themselves, or do they have to have us
No.
with them?
It's still the seller's house.
it still belongs to the seller. And, well, first of all, how would they get in if there's a super lockbox?
I had an agent give the key to the buyer.
Whoa.
Yes.
whoa,
The
you're
agent,
just breaking all kinds of
the
rules.
agent, you should report her.
I didn't. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that was, okay.
It's liability. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
You know,
big
you
time.
can't, whew. So, never let your clients go on a property. It really is not even cool to let them show up at the property and walk around to the backyard, at staying outside before you get there. You never know what surveillance camera there is, and you know, if it offends the seller, you may not get the property. So with every step of the way, do make choices to help your client win the property. So, you know, just if they're gonna do something that's gonna, anyway, you got it. You understand that. All right. In case you didn't know this, but I bet you do, in B, end of the first line, sentence beginning, buyer shall have the sole duty to become familiar with neighborhood conditions that could affect the property, such as landfills, quarries, power lines, airports, cemeteries, prisons, stadiums, odor and noise producing activities, crime and school, land use, government and transportation maps and plans, as in zoning plans. They may try to pin it on you, but the contract says
Buyer.
it is not the seller's responsibility to say, oh, by the way, on the other side of my back fence is an old cemetery. They're very, you know, that could really matter. All of these things could really matter
It
to
said
people.
not unless you know, they've asked. You're not, you know, obligated to tell them unless they asked, right?
Yes, if they, well, the question is if the listing agent knows and they ask, yes, the listing
Yes.
agent should tell
Okay,
it.
okay.
But the seller, let's say the seller didn't tell their listing agent, it's just, It's the buyer's response, not the seller's.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. It is good. If you know something to be true, you have to answer if asked. But the seller doesn't have to tell even their agent. So there are plenty of folks that, whether it's, I was shown property in the vicinity, like over by Douglas High School. I mean, it's not that far to the Atlanta Penitentiary. And just depending on, people's sensitivities, good or not good. So, but the law is, it's the buyer's responsibility to scope out the surrounding area. Okay, let's zip over to page 4. Down at the bottom, notices. In lots of places in the contract, it says notice must be given. Notice must be given. And the bottom line is that notice it has to be in writing. A phone call is not giving notice. So that first sentence, all notices given, my least favorite word, hereunder, shall be in writing, legible, and signed by the party giving notice. Now, we can represent our clients. So if it's your client's giving notice, but if you have a buyer brokerage agreement, you can represent them. So it's, and your email signature is sufficient on an email, and you can do it by email.
Actual notice versus what is the other one, constructive?
Maybe so. So you're negotiating, you haven't gone binding yet, you're talking to the other agent, and you have verbal agreement to the terms. Okay. One of the other parties might want to say, okay, on that date, that was our binding agreement date. No. It's not until the person making the offer or the final counter offer, they've lobbed it across the fence, that person has to sign it and send it back, then you're binding. It can be very confusing. I apologize. The good news is they've loosened up the restrictions about who actually fills in the binding date. It can be anybody. It can be the client, it can be you on either side. But sometimes people can get sideways about that. And why does the binding agreement date matter? If you've only got 7 days due diligence, and one party's saying it's today, and the other party said, no, it was yesterday, and you're on the losing end, your client's on the losing end because you lost today. Mm-hmm. So you can have a beautiful agreement verbally, but it's not official until signed and just sent over. And the contract says, as soon as you hit send on that email, that's good enough. It doesn't matter if the other people have read it or acknowledged receipt.
They said the same thing about it was a test question on the exam that said when they put the offer, as soon as they put the offer in the mailbox, it's considered but if it gets lost, then what? What if it gets lost?
Well, that's why nobody does it in the mail.
Yeah.
But it was tricksy back before the internet and all this stuff. There were lots of arguments in the old days. Lots of arguments. So it is a lot more streamlined. All right, zip over. And so I wanted you to hear about notice because now we're going to go to binding agreement date on page 6. Okay, let me just reread I.
So, because I came in late, this is the only thing you need to fill out when you make an offer? Or what is?
Well, we've only done page 1. They revised the form nicely, so instead of having blanks all through the 8-page document, they put the blanks here, and then as you turn the page, you see, here's the paragraph that explains 2. Here's
Okay,
the paragraph that explains 3.
So this is when everybody's agreed. This is what we're completing.
No, when you make the offer,
Okay, this is-
the buyer's agent fills it out but
Now we're just going through this, yeah. That's
lots it over, yeah. That's his, we're filling this out theoretically, but we're learning as we go. A small point in letter I, the very last sentence. In the event of a dispute over the binding agreement date, it can only be resolved by a written agreement of the buyer and the seller. And all that means is the two agents,
Everybody's gonna come and
we're
agree
on
what the
page
binding
6, letter I, lowercase I, the final sentence.
Oh, the final.
In the event of a dispute over the binding agreement date, that you can't, the primary parties have to agree what day is the binding agreement date. So it's kind of just an honesty check. The agents can't manipulate the binding agreement date to suit them. You know, the parties have to agree. Yes?
I want to confirm. So if I'm working with a buyer, we want to offer, I send this over,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other agent they accept it on the other side. That means it's binding at that point. Once it's been accepted on the other side, and they send email saying that they.
Okay. They accept it, sign it, send it back. But you have notice is in writing. So if they just accept it and then just sit over there on their side of the fence,
It's not binding, but they have to accept it and send something back in writing, and then that is binding.
which usually is just a copy of the signed document. That's what you send back. So just to say, don't just, you and your client sign, you just call up and go, hey, we're binding. You're not really binding.
Okay.
No, you're not binding until you email that signed document back to the other side.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
And it can all be done on the same day. It's not like you lose a day. Just do the right thing and sign, and because when all is said and done, everybody's got to have a copy of the fully signed agreement.
Got it.
Does that helps? Mm-hmm. Okay. In now letter J, we're almost at the end, I promise. Letter J, you don't have to start highlighting the first line with the word when. When a party to this transaction, meaning not the agents, the actual buyer or seller, who has accepted an offer or counteroffer, skip over a few words, delivers notice of that acceptance to the party who made the offer or counteroffer, that's when it's considered binding. That's just what I said, Chanel.
Okay.
So verbal is not good enough, and you can't just accept an offer and sit there. You have to send it back to the other side. However, the actual party that's filling in the binding stuff is not important. So
When it's set up next day, right?
sorry.
I'm sorry, no.
no. If offer comes in and we accept it, or go back and forth, we accept it, send it back over. No, that's the binding agreement date.
Okay, but
So
it
when does
counts.
when the clock starts is the next day. Everything is after binding agreement date. So it's so critical when you do go under contract. I mean, one of the first things you do is you go to your own calendar, and at the top you create a thing that says Miller BAD, binding agreement date. Because you're going to go back to it and back to it and back to it to recalculate how many days you have for this or that binding agreement date. Really, really. So getting that Earnest Money in, firmly establishing the binding agreement date. Doreen.
My question.
Okay, cool. Last thing before we get to our exhibits is the very last thing, 5E, material relationship. In the class, Lynn and Renee said, if you have to ask, should I disclose that, blah, 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 then yes. It can be, and this is that you have a relationship with your client other than just a business relationship, and usually it's friendly, so it can be personal, familial, social, business, between the broker or the agent and any other party. So it could be somebody on the other side, which could impair the ability of the broker or affiliated licensees to exercise fair and independent judgment relative to their client. So this is to protect, you're not going to give bad advice to your client so that your sister who's selling her house gets more money. That's what it's trying to protect.
Honesty.
Exactly. Okay. Our next page. So we filled out page 1, and we'll share one of the page 1s with you, Eliza. The 7 exhibits and addenda. Becky gave us her seller's disclosure, her community association disclosure, and her warranty deed, aka legal description. We are going to fill out a financing contingency, which, do you have with you the handouts I gave you on Monday for the, we had the certainty? If you have your conventional loan exhibit, we're actually not going to fill it out, but we're putting together an offer, so I want you to feel what it's like. And of course, all this will be electronic, but we're going to know what it's like in paper. I'm going to pretend like. And if you can't find the conventional, just grab the FHA, whatever.
Oh.
Everybody got at least one?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm going to pretend like this is the warranty deed because I don't have a copy of it. I have all these exhibits. I've got 5. Now, I don't have a lead-based paint, and I should because I'm a QAP agent. Y'all forgive me for not providing that. So I have 5 different exhibits. I have a loan exhibit, community association, 2 of those. Seller's disclosure, legal description. Let's pretend like we have a lead-based paint. Okay, so we have 5 exhibits. There is no rule about, well, first of all, you're going to check the boxes next to the ones that are going to be included in this offer. Then in each of the blank lines, you're going to put an alphabetical letter, A, B, C, D, E. There is no right or wrong to whether you just go A, B, C, because they're listed, the forms are listed alphabetical. However, I believe in being strategic, and when you are going to send this over, it's going to be purchase and sale followed by exhibit A, B, C, D. What does the seller, they already know what the seller's disclosure and the community association disclosure already says. So do we want to put them first? No. I think the seller wants to know, how are they going to pay for this?
Closing costs and stuff?
Well, no, what kind of loan are they getting? How much are they putting down? So I just think to make my best shot, well, if I were receiving it, I would want it to be purchase and sale followed by whatever the finance contingency, and I make that exhibit A. That is my way. That's not a rule. It's not a Rawls Group rule. Take it or leave it. I then, well, then it's just, there's really absolutely no rhyme or reason to the sequencing of any of the ones that the seller provides. Doesn't matter, because they've already signed it. Like if you have seller's disclosure, community association, lead-based paint, and legal description that they provided, just, I don't care, whatever. So basically I put the purchase and sale agreement, and then I make the first exhibits the ones that are fresh coming from our side. They've never seen before, because that's what they need to look at. And all the ones they gave us, tail end Charlie. Okay, have we talked about the affiliated marketing agreement? And affiliated marketing disclosure and the wire fraud disclosure? Okay. There are two documents that are not GAR forms that we don't include them in contracts. But we do include them with the buyer brokerage agreement and the listing agreement, because it's between us and our clients. So I will cover those. We're actually going to look at them and read them, and so you know exactly what to do with those, but not today. I'm just saying you don't have to share those with the other side in a contract. Okay, so for number 7, you check the correct boxes and assign your alpha letters. We put letters with exhibits and numbers with amendments. We're not going to do special steps because I'm going to cover those on another day. Let's see, our signature page. Okay, the bottom, with the agents, if you represent the buyer, you're going to fill out all the listing agents' information, and as I showed you, and Eliza, look up here at the screen. Okay, here's the listing for the property. You go down to the listing agent's name, and presto magnifico, whee! There's everything you need to fill out the form.
Did she say wee?
Yes.
Like the grapefruit.
Did you know about that? Okay. So then within every listing is all the information.
I failed.
Eliza, 2 other things I pointed out was that as you, the buyer's agent, are researching, what should we offer for this house? Click on our friend the clock, and you can see, ooh, it started at $575. They dropped dropped the house to $550. Ooh, and it's been on the market for a while. Or do we think we're gonna pay full price? I don't think so. Anyway, it's just research. And back
99.
in the 2010. All right, let's just for grins. Let's see. You tell them. Oh, and it's vacant. Does it look any different today? The paint color.
Yes.
The kitchen cabinets.
color.
Everything else is the
Bathroom
same.
Beautiful. I'm glad.
All right, that's enough of that. I wanted you to see that part of your fiduciary duty to your client is to, you want to find out everything you can about. And then the last one, what happened? Oh, this is the old one. There is this lovely icon right here that is a stack of documents. And it says documents. When you click on it, it takes you to our docs, and we see that Becky actually, what she did is a PDF of 3 disclosures, attached it. So that's where I got the seller's disclosure community association.
Oh, do we get a class on dot? I know we're not using dot anymore. Do we get a class on
say?
Yes,
That's nice.
absolutely. Okay, so you are empowered to fill all this out, correct? Who knows off the top of your head? You can't answer, Caroline. What is our office FMLS ID?
H44.
No.
No, that's the license.
QAP 01, KWAP 01, or MLS.
Okay.
Our office license with the state of Georgia is, I don't know what, H44315.
Okay.
I think these are listed at the top of your password sheets.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If you're in a pinch, go look up somebody's listing, from the office, and it'll be there. You can find all kind of information in other people's listings.
Well, how would you get the seller's information?
So glad you asked. You are not required to give anything but their name, and even putting their name is kind of a courtesy, because if there ever is a need to give notice, you give notice to their agent, and that checks the box. So I never fill in. I do look up their names, and how do you look up the names, you ask? Well, I go back to my listing that I leave open the whole time I'm doing this. I go down here to the hyperlinked tax ID, click, it takes me into Realist, and it's Margaret and Catherine Long. Let me enlarge a little here. And they don't live here.
That
So they're
explains it.
absentee owners. So maybe it was a rental, or maybe they just
Can I ask you a side note? Can you share that with the buyer?
Absolutely.
It's public record.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, they don't live here, so they might be a little bit more aggressive.
I want you
in
to
trying sell
think
this house.
strategically at every turn in this
Okay.
process. And if it's public info, yeah, it's just if something was told you in confidence, that's a different story.
And on that property, I put that remodeling loan
Yes, never,
next
you're
to-
correct. If you were the listing agent, you'd be displaying, hey, you get a remodel.
They have updated pictures right now? Do they have updated pictures?
Yes.
Yes, they did. She was looking at the old,
Yeah, I was showing you the old one.
which 9 years ago it sold for $445.
Something
Fortunately, I
like
think
that,
it's
yeah.
right around there still.
Yeah. You know, and I've looked in, not everybody's keen on a tile floor in an expensive property, but
Right.
anyway,
I like
Okay.
those floors.
we have filled the purchase and sale, gather up our little friends here, our, exhibits. How are we gonna send it over to the other side?
Purchase and sale agreement followed by the exhibits.
Right, that's the sequence, but I was, getting at,
Email.
do we mail it to them? No. Do we courier it? Yes. So
Check private.
think if you were the, well, I'll just say, most listing agents are not really keen to get an offer and all the exhibits sent to them through .loop, DocuSign, one document at a time. It's messy. They'd really like one continuous document. Now, when you're in the signing stage, yes, you go one document at a time. But once you're ready to send the whole caboodle to the other side, I really recommend that you, and when you go, check, I'm doing all these documents, download, it'll put it in, make it one continuous PDF. And then you're gonna send an email. So I'd like for you to go back to your, this page of your notes, clip notes, guides. And right here, this blurb, you're gonna send your client's offer electronically, and you don't just send an attachment. You always wanna say, please confirm receipt. Nothing worse than not being sure that they got your offer. It is kind of customary that you say, please find my client's solid offer. She has solid financing on your solid home, whatever, just something positive that, hopefully these things are true, that you're, you're complete. But I'm telling you, remember, you are, in addition to wanting to keep your client for life, you're establishing your reputation in the real estate world. So professional. So just don't be slap dab.
Flat out lying.
Well, definitely don't do that. And you might even say, this would be my client's first purchase, something, just a little something positive about your client, a little something positive about the offer, unless it is truly a lowball offer. Don't claim it's a good one. And then, of course, if your buyer has sent you a little paragraph, you can just copy and insert it into the email that you're sending over, and then you send it.
This
and
is
then
coming from your own email, KW email.
your own KW
So it's not
email,
coming
yes.
through dot loop or command.
Well, the problem is that when you send it through dot loop, it goes one document at a time, and it's just messy to receive it that way.
Okay.
It can be done. It's not. Listing agents don't like it. They want
So
a
how would you
PDF.
link all the files together? It
In
would
dot
be an
loop,
option.
when you have all them listed there, and if you go, I want to download
Select
this,
all of
this.
Mhm.
When you hit download, it puts them
It'll put
together.
them together.
Not all of them though, like the affiliated marketing and stuff like that.
Right, you don't send them all, but whichever ones you select,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
it puts them together. Okay, so you attach the offer, you set a few niceties, you copy and paste your client's love note, if there is one, and you hit send. And and you don't have to do this, I blind copy my client on that email, so they see, they've got proof positive. I sent it, what I said about them and their offer,
And what they
full
applied.
transparency, just a little peace of mind, because people will worry about everything in these things. And so as soon as I hit send, where's my friend? I'm now texting the listing agent, just sent my client's offer on 122 Main Street, please confirm receipt. Because they could be out to dinner, they could be anywhere. So it's a double email and text, it just,
They could be out of the country.
exactly. If they're out of the country, WhatsApp, not, your regular, you're
Do whatever
communicating.
you gotta do to stay within that time frame.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, we've sent it over. Phew, the waiting game. Now, what, we put a deadline on offers.
What is that?
Rule of thumb, I skipped it. It was at the very bottom of page 1. Typically, it's 24 to 48 hours. I would say start with 24, unless you know for sure that the sellers are not just traveling, because they could just be in Birmingham and they got funds, but they're out of the country, some circumstance where if you were in their shoes, it might be hard to get back in 24 hours, but because you do want to keep it tight, you want an answer as soon as you can get one, because other buyers could come along. So pretty much 24 hours. Then on the other, I forgot to bring my hat, so I was going to bring 2 colored hats. So I was the buyer's agent for a while. I'm taking that hat off and now I'm listing agent. So I have strategic best practices for what do you do when you get an offer and you've got your listing agent hat on. Because you're just waiting now, buyer's agent. Okay.
Now, how do you count weekends? Do you count weekends?
Yeah, the only time weekends are not counted are for the purpose of depositing earnest money. So when you do due diligence,
So, I mean, if
you count every day of the week.
Right, but I'm saying when you're giving in, let's say they're putting in an offer on Friday.
Yes, thank you. So I start with 24 hours and I think about these things. Are the seller or the listing agent out of the country? What day of the week is it? If it is, I'm making the offer on Saturday and it's Sunday, I might lop it over till Monday. If I'm making it on, however, if I'm making it not too late on Saturday, but either Saturday morning or Friday, and they're having an open house on Sunday, I'm definitely putting the offer deadline before the open house starts and other competition comes
Yeah,
along.
as soon as possible.
Now, so what happens if you get to the time deadline and nobody said nothing to nobody? Technically, the offer is no longer valid. So if the seller wanted to call the next day and go, hey, we accept this offer, the buyer can say no, or if they want, they can say yes. So it doesn't mean that all negotiations are dead necessarily.
Everybody has to agree.
Right.
Right.
If the parties want to keep playing, just like you get your due diligence the last day and you're waiting for a quote from a contractor, the smart thing to do is before 11:59 to prepare and send over a amendment to extend due diligence.
So they don't rescind
2 or
the
3 days.
contract. Yeah.
Exactly. But here again, it has been known to happen that if both parties are in complete agreement and, okay, we'll wait. I mean, it's not smart business, but it has happened. If everybody is agreeable, you can keep moving forward. Okay, so at the bottom of the second page of my Cliff Notes, so here's what a real estate consultant does, because yes, there's prep work before you, when I hear of one's coming, yes, I text my client, say, we're getting an offer. But, they're immediately gonna have a million questions. How much? Da-da. So, I want y'all to be ready when the questions come. So, you get an offer. Okay, if you send it and you've asked for confirmation of receipt, so what do you think you should do? You should confirm receipt, number one, with the buyer's agent. And the nice thing to do is to thank them. Thank you for your offer, even if it's terrible. Thank you for your client's offer. I'm telling you, you're building your reputation in the industry. If I can tell you, they want to know, when are you going to talk to the seller? When are you going to talk to the seller? So go ahead and say, I'll be talking to my client tonight. You may not know, but you'll say, I'll present it to my client and we'll do our best to get back to you before the deadline. Just say something, because I can promise you they're over there going, because their buyer's going to say, when are they going to get back to us? Mm-hmm. This is how it goes. Okay. Number 2 at the top of the next page. I have heard of agents in this office, experienced agents, that just immediately forward the offer to their client. Now, mind you, they're experienced agents. I wouldn't. I would read the darn thing first, because when your client starts to say, well, what about this? And you haven't even looked at it, egg on the face. You don't, So, my second thing is that I will scan, even I'm sitting in my car on my phone, I'm scanning through like purchase price, closing date, number of days of due diligence, any closing cost, and then I'll go to the special steps to see if they're offering, asking for a home warranty or anything else that costs money. And then I zip to the financing contingency, because I got to know whether this is a good player. So that's another reason to make that Exhibit A, the financing contingency. So I scan it. So I may have sent them a text saying, oh, an offer's coming, but I don't actually say, oh, I've received an offer until I've reviewed the offer. Don't set yourself up to be a dodo in front of your client. Because the questions will come fast and furious because they're excited and nervous. So this is something that, I don't know, outside of KW, I don't know if it's often done. You need to pick up the phone and text or call the lender that they specify on the financing contingency. You cannot take at face value that they're really pre-qualified or they're really getting this loan. Just because a finance contingency is filled out completely, I want to hear it from the. I want to hear it from, and hopefully, they're like, oh yeah, they turn in all the paperwork we've asked for. They're solid. That's what you want. If it's not that, you need to, for the benefit of your client, you need to find out if there's anything fishy. Yes?
Quick question. How do you manage a multiple offer situation? Like if
That's
you have
coming.
offers coming, okay.
I got that on my list.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So we're checking that out because that's your responsibility, not your seller's, to validate the financial wherewithal of the buyer. Okay. Then I'm going to show you. Are we at 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Horrors! Okay. I'll show you the command thing later. And the counter. That's fine. So multiple offers. I'll give you quick and dirty. You've gotten one, another agent, oh, we're going to send you an offer, da 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 da. I don't really consider it multiple until it gets to 3. If it's just 2, you can just kind of compare the 2. It's the seller's decision if they want to call for highest and best. Let's say there's just a feeding frenzy. Something comes on the market and there's not much in that price range and people are just putting in offers. Some people, the less experienced buyers, they're going to put, 90% to list price offer. And so when you're in that situation, you talk to yourself, Mr. Seller, would you like to call for highest and best? And that means giving everybody a shot to up the ante. And they all have to come in by one deadline, and your seller, you promise the seller's going to review by this date and time, and we'll get back to everybody by this date and time. So fairness, it's level playing field. So it's not your decision, it is your seller's decision. They don't always want to do that because they want to just accept an offer and get on with it. So you talk to them, and then you do 2 things. Put in the private remarks, I had to stop and think about that. Private remarks of the listing, something like calling for highest and best by multiple offer situation, calling for highest and best by 5 p.m. Friday, seller to respond by 5 p.m. Saturday. But then you email all the agents that have sent, so it's in writing, as opposed to just, hey. Because, oh my gosh, Diane Black had submitted an offer. They decided to do highest and best, and the listing agent didn't call them back. They called the other people. Whoo, that's a lose your license offense. So, yeah.
Favoritism.
Then you wait, and they all come in, and then you have to do a comparison, which I'm going to teach you how to do the comparison later. And your seller picks, but so the critical thing is every single party has to feel like they have the same deadline, and they were included.
Yeah.
People get really testy.
It's like how your business cards have to be in alphabetical order.
Did that answer?
Yeah. Well, and then I know people gotta go, but I want to. So, how do you put it off? Like, if offers are constantly coming in, you have to present that to your seller, and they want to keep waiting for.
Well, each one of these offers has a deadline to answer.
Right, and what you can get around that, let's say you've gotten 2 and the deadline is 5 today, you better call for highest and best before that 5 o'clock deadline. And so as long as you've gone back to them and said, we're in a multiple offer and the new deadline is going to be, then you don't have to worry about that 5 o'clock deadline. But they have to be communicated with. Preferably in writing, you can start with phone. So what you counsel your seller that, well, first of all, I'd say as soon as you get to 3, you discuss it and you establish. It can be hard if the offers aren't what the seller is looking for. They are going to want to delay. But once you broadcast, here's the deadline and bring it back. Your seller can choose to reject all those offers. They can choose that.
So, I have another question. Is there like a form, like we can, like, to give us some kind of order in a buyer's consultation to be able to disclose, like to remember to say, oh, well, your earnest money is due, and like to talk about certain important things in the process.
Okay,
Is there
can
like
you
a-
show me the handouts that Kevin gave you on Monday?
Yeah.
Do you have them in your book?
Yeah.
Because I thought that in
I said, I'll be there at
his
4.
one that's CITO, CITO.
Okay. You will talk about that later. Okay.
I'm gonna ask my husband right now.
Okay.
I'll probably take those tickets, that'd be great, Deborah. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, hold on. Hold on.
They would have been hole punched, so you might have put them in the. Okay. Okay.
Your highlighters back?
Only if you have another. If I haven't ever given you one, you're welcome to keep it. Well, it would be this plus. Yes, we'll revisit that.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm covering everything I need to cover in the
I
process.
know.
And
Let
I-
me tell you who has.
Yeah, and I got a phone.
Is Mia Hanna. Amazing. I'll dig up
I'm trying
my
to get my time.
old emails.
Too busy.
And I'm gonna send y'all some links of classes that you could watch to help. Mia has the smoothest, most comprehensive buyer
That's gonna
consult.
be a
She's the bomb.
Okay.
Most people wing it. I gotta admit.
Because like you were just talking about earnest money. I'm like, okay, I didn't even think about. I wouldn't have thought about having that in a buyer's contract.